being at companies that have given me the opportunity to grow as much as I did is as much outside of my control as my relatives or friends who have been in situations where that company went bottoms up or they had to go find a new job or whatever. So I guess you can call that luck. And to your point, I don't know, maybe I had more surface area for that luck because, the reason I'm at Landmark now is that my supervisor saw me present at a conference, and when he was hiring for my position was like, we should make sure we get that guy on the list too.
That's the perfect example of the luck surface area.
Yeah.
This week, I'm joined by Jonathan Bove, EVP at Landmark, devoted father, and someone who's mastered the art of balancing relentless ambition with unshakable values. We dive deep into officiating weddings while closing deals, raising fearless kids, and finding your person who makes you better. This isn't just business talk. It's about staying human in a hustle-driven world. If you've ever wondered how to do work that matters while being present for those who matter most, this one's for you.
I tell my kids all the time, like, everyone in this family makes mistakes. You have to do things badly to learn from them. In the business world, I'd rather learn from somebody else's mistakes than my own, right? Like, somebody else has already paid for that experience. There's no need to pay that price twice, right? That's what collaboration is about. It's sharing that experience so we don't all have to make the same mistakes over again to learn that lesson. But, my kids are kids. As a parent, you try to just make sure that the guardrails are up so when they make that mistake, it doesn't harm them and they can learn from it.
Do you have family values?
That's a great question.
Property managers lose hours chasing rent, while delinquency and filing costs add up to massive losses. The financial impact? Millions in unpaid rent sold to collections agencies that recover just 20 to 30%, while taking a huge cut. Now, the Kelsey you trust for leasing helps you recover more rent in-house, reducing reliance on agencies and maximizing revenue. With Collections AI, Kelsey automates rent and move-out collections, from the first missed payment to move-out, while ensuring compliance across jurisdictions. Easily train and set up Kelsey on your company's collections process, including CARES and state-regulated workflows. She doesn't just set reminders. Kelsey answers resident questions, tracks promise to pay dates, and follows up persistently to keep payments on track. Need oversight? Corporate teams can monitor collections in real time with Zuma's dashboard, while site teams use the Chrome Assistant to track payments and even respond as Kelsey when needed. Kelsey also evaluates resident risk with AI, providing instant insights to help you make smarter renewal decisions. The impact? Doubles collections velocity, reduces filings, cuts site team workload by 85%. Stop leaving rent revenue on the table. Let Zuma's Collections AI handle the heavy lifting while you focus on what matters. Get started today.
Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Well, let's just pick up where we started. So we talked last week, was it?
Yes.
For the first time.
Yeah.
And you were headed to a wedding to officiate.
I was.
This is your fourth officiation.
It is. Yep.
Why are you so desirable to be an officiator?
I think the easiest answer is that I really love just watching interactions with people. And I often joke, I get to travel all the time in my job. And if you go to an airport, everybody's emotional reactions at an airport are 125% of people's everyday reactions, right? Whether you're having the best day ever because you just landed and you're on your way to see your friends or your family, or you've got a flight cancellation and all that stuff, right? All the different reactions you can have in an airport. Weddings are like that, except it's just happy. There's like a 2% chance that things go sideways, right? But if you're officiating a wedding for people that you're getting to contribute to one of the best days of their lives, right? So that's just an awesome thing to do. And the part of my brain that is supposed to be nervous about public speaking is broken. It doesn't work. So amazing. I've done a bunch of theater growing up, and I'm happy. Honestly, the most important part when you do it is to make sure you step out of frame for the important photos, right? It's like, yes, you're there and you're marrying them, but like they don't need the photo of the two of them having their first kiss to have you prominently featured in the background. One of those 4 weddings was my sister's wedding, and I'm definitely like in the background of my sister's first kiss with her husband, just being like, I'm so happy for you guys. So,
That's awesome.
we learn from these lessons and we move on, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm Indian, and I don't know if you've ever been to an Indian wedding.
I haven't, but I'm familiar with the scale. The difference in scale.
The scale and the multi-day, like, multiple event kind of ordeal. And it's funny, weddings are so fun for everybody, but the bride and groom at an Indian wedding, because the amount of people they're saying hi to, and it's probably somewhere in the US where you just have so much.
We finished the ceremony on Friday. It was a Friday wedding. And you normally do the ceremony and then there's maybe like a short period where you do some family photos or whatnot. And during that period, the wedding planner went and got a copy of the license for me. So, the last thing you have to do as an officiant is actually sign the thing that says, power vested in me, Travis County, Texas, you're now married. So I did that. And I paused for a minute to hand it to them. And they were the bride and groom, that is to say, we're about to walk up this little pathway to the reception space, excuse me. And I just paused and I said, listen, you guys are about to have a 4-hour-long conversation, each moment of which will last approximately 30 seconds. So this is like the only time you're going to get today between now and the very end of the day where it's actually the two of you. So like, pretend to reread this marriage license as many times as you need to, but this is the 5 minutes you get with just the two of you. So maximize it, take as many deep breaths as you need to, but like make it a moment, because the rest of it's going to be a bit of a blur. And, the groom saw me like 35 minutes later and he was like, you were right. This is going between one hello and the next hello. Yeah. Next family member. So yeah, you're right. That's, the ceremony is, kind of quiet and calm, and then you're working for the rest of the wedding. You're thanking everybody for being there and being part of the moment. So
let's talk a little bit about you and your background. So what would I need to know about Jonathan's early years to understand you today?
Sure. I grew up in Vermont. My folks, so 6 of my 8 great-grandparents are all from 20 minutes within each other outside of Naples, Italy. So I grew up in a huge Italian Catholic family. On just one side of my family, I was one of 27 grandchildren. So, and we all went to the same small Catholic school in Vermont. So like when I was a 5th grader, I had a first cousin in every grade from kindergarten through high school senior. So it was, and then I would, see those people at school. I'd see my cousins.
You guys all went to the same school?
Oh yeah, we all went to the same Catholic school, and
that went from kindergarten to high school.
Well, there was a high school and a grammar school. Well, we all Christ the King in Mount St. Joseph Academy, so we all did both. Almost all of us did both, and then on Sundays we'd all go to my grandma's house and we'd have Sunday dinner after mass, and it was funny because you were invariably older than some of your cousins and younger than other cousins. So it just depending on like how we would break up into groups on a given day was a function of like whether or not you were the youngest person there or the oldest person there. So I guess for lack of a better way to put it, that gave me a lot of reps being in very different social situations. I'm a very extroverted person. That's no surprise to me because I just spent most of my childhood actively engaging with my incredibly large family. So
do you have many siblings too?
Well, I actually just have one sibling, my younger sister, who's about 1.5 years younger than me. But again, like that, I mean, the other side of the family is probably another 20 first cousins.
So at these dinners, there would be literally 20 cousins all together.
Well, I mean, because of I have cousins on that side of the family that are older than some of my aunts and uncles. So, I mean, some of them were in college and some of them had moved to Florida and some of that, but there was always a cohort of us still in town. And it was, they've obviously all got parents, right? So my aunts and uncles are there. And it was definitely the sort of situation where reliably it was a full dinner table and then the like breakfast area in the kitchen and then a couple of folks with the TV trays in the living room. We'd have to, only so much room in grandma's house. So,
And what do you think what impact did you think that had growing up? It sounds like you said you feel like that made you an extrovert because you're constantly socializing with people.
Yeah. And certainly I have cousins that aren't like extroverts, right? That some people respond to that stimulus differently. But for me, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like the most recharging thing possible. So, from my perspective, I'm not like I'm at one of our corporate meetings or like one of our summits or retreats where we bring our team in, or an annual conference or any of our industry conferences. I know for a lot of folks, those are really exhausting. But for me, it's like, oh my gosh, I get to see all these people I really like working with, or all these people in our industry that I respect, and get to have these interactions that really are like relationship deposits for me. So it's really fulfilling. And that's definitely, I think, comes from that part of my upbringing.
Do you think there's a downside in being an extrovert?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because I think society.
Yeah. Well, I think, yes. I think that society is certainly, I don't know that it's necessarily built for us in the same way like it is for right-handedness or something, right? But I certainly think that I feel like extroverts get cheat codes a lot of the time, right? It's like, oh, well, I can, I could be bored on this flight, or I could make friends with this person's grandma who's next to me. Like, well, okay, I'm going to do that. It's going to be fun. So yeah. And I mentioned when we spoke, I'm running for school board in our local school district. And that's, it's very much just like, this is extroversion writ large, right? I'm going to a stranger's house, talking to them about what I think our goals for the school district should be. They're responding with what they think, it's the level of comfort with that conversation that I don't think otherwise, honestly, if it was the sort of thing that exhausted me, I would have been done after the first week and a half. So.
Yeah. I think about extroversion as a huge, I think society is built on catering to extroverts. When you think about there's a term called luck surface area, which when you think about luck, I think luck can actually be manufactured, right? Let's say you have more interactions and more exposure. You can't really build luck just sitting in your bedroom all day. So I think as an extrovert, if you're sitting on a plane and you're sitting next to somebody that you decide to say hello to, and that has some impact in your life, I think there's a huge upside to being an extrovert. And that's why I asked you, like, what do you think the downsides are to being an extrovert?
Yeah, well, I think that my wife is not an extrovert. My wife is incredibly socially competent and comfortable and capable, but she does not get her energy recharged by those large-scale social interactions. She has a close group of specific friends, and time with those folks is what recharges her. And so, the drawback is often just we have to be intentional about the fact that those energy sinks don't line up for us, right? So we'll get done with like a cool social activity and I'll be like, I want to talk about this the entire drive home. And she's like, I would like a few moments to process before we dive right in. And, we've been married for more than a decade now. So we both sort of know that we're going to get in the car and we'll wait, and she'll eventually like open the conversation, and then we'll go ahead and process the, cool interactions we just had, or those folks we just met, or that show we just saw. So you have to establish your habits, right? You got to set your norms for that relationship, just like any other one. But, I certainly think that like, I've always had a love of reading, and that is certainly an intentional, quiet, personal space, which I think as I've gotten older and the amount of technologies that can intrude into that quiet personal space has increased, I certainly think it's a function of my extroversion that I have to be incredibly intentional about those quiet, sequestered times, whether it's, like reading the Daily Stoic in the morning, or listening to a podcast, or reading a book at night.
What do you read?
Man, what don't I read? I literally just got delivered a couple days ago a book called The Tiger, which is a Ryan Holiday recommendation. But I spent 6 months in Vladivostok, Russia earlier in my career, helping a university there build like an on-campus residence life program. And this story is set in like the Kamchatka province, so part of northeastern Russia. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. That was the hook that drew me into wanting to check it out. But I literally just started the introduction. So
Where does this love for education come from? I know you started your career at Campus Advantage,
Yep.
so I imagine that has an influence. But why lean into education and college in so many different aspects?
I think there's a number of different parts to that answer. First part is, well, I went to school originally, my undergraduate major was software engineering. And I was making perfectly good grades. I mean, they weren't stellar. They were above average. I was doing just fine.
And you were always a math and science person in high school?
Yes. I would say that it, in fact, came easily to me. But it also, like I had the opportunity to take some college level math classes in high school. And so that felt like an area where I was really able to push myself and push my limits and challenge myself, a thing that has stuck with me. But I went on my first internship. The college I attended, RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, had a big focus on co-ops or internship programs. And I went on my first software engineering co-op and I was like, oh, I hate this. Like I liked the work, and it didn't have anything to do with my coworkers or anything like that. It was just like, oh, it turns out that if I'm not hanging out with my friends in our like dorm, sitting around and coding for 8 hours isn't actually fulfilling to me in the way that camaraderie of working on something together was. And so I started to explore what my options were. And there was a technical communications program at RIT that really stood out to me. I had taken a few communications classes. I was really involved in theater at the university. And I started down that path, and I didn't really know when I changed majors to communications what I was going to do. I just knew that effectively communicating with people resonated with me. And then I had a supervisor. I was an RA, and he pulled me aside one day and was like, you know that you can do this for like a job, right? Like his job, obviously. And I said, well, what does that entail? And we talked more about a master's degree in higher ed, and then the vice president of student affairs, Dr. Mary Beth Cooper, who is now president of Springfield College and was a mentor to me and remains a mentor to me. She really, I think, kind of outlined for me like what that path looked like. And so if you had asked me in my senior year of college what I thought I was going to do, I would have told you, oh, I went to school for software engineering, but I'm going to go work at a university. I'm going to be like dean of admissions at Middlebury College back home in Vermont or something. So I went to grad school back in Vermont at the University of Vermont, one of the best higher ed programs in the country. Point of pride for that program, for sure. And I got my master's in higher ed. And again, I thought, okay, well, I tried my foot. I dipped my toe in admissions, and I did an internship in like development, like alumni relations. So one in admissions, one in alumni relations, one in college student residence life. And there's this like big conference. It's called NASPA, National Association of Student Practitioners and Student Personnel Administrators, excuse me. And I went to the intent is that every spring graduate students from programs all over the country all go to the placement exchange, and they apply for various jobs at different colleges. And I had like 10 interviews lined up. And before I went, I got headhunted by Campus Advantage to be their, I want to say at the time, assistant director or director of residence life, something like that. And I went and interviewed a few weeks before the conference, and the day before the conference, my supervisor, who actually officiated my wedding, sent me the offer letter. And from there, I moved into the private world and never looked back. And it's funny, my dad was a real estate broker, but I never really knew private student housing existed. RIT, Rochester, wasn't a market where there was a lot, if any, of that when I went to school. And so that really just completely opened up like a whole world of opportunity for me, and sort of this off-campus property management, the larger world of multifamily apartments. And, it's funny. I think I know one of the few people who's the exception to the rule that no 3-year-old, when asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, says, I really want to be a regional director for a multifamily.
Who is that? Because I haven't heard a single person.
So her name's Anita Arnold, and Anita is the exception to that rule because her mom was a regional for Graystar, or EDR maybe, depending on timing. And yeah, so she grew up having a mom in the industry. And I think it's really interesting to me to see all of my colleagues who have kids, whether they're younger kids like mine or kids going to college. Many of us in the industry have kids going to school, going to college, and I'm really curious to see how many of them end up in the industry or go do something else entirely. Right.
So I want to dive into a couple things that I find really interesting. You actually remind me in some ways of my co-founder Kendrick, who studied mechanical engineering in college, worked at SpaceX, loves theater, loves art, loves music. And you seem like a very dynamic person. There's not many people that are super left-brained and right-brained at the same time. Was that intentionally cultivated, or are you just following your excitement and things that interest you?
I don't think there was a point in my life where I thought to myself, man, I've been really into STEM. I got to start doing more theater. I mean, I definitely was growing up. There was definitely a point in high school where I really got super into theater and student government, and that amplified that part of my personality, I think. But I think it's kind of come naturally. I think I've just chased things I'm passionate about.
What about your parents? What did they do growing up, and what is your relationship with them like?
My relationship with them is good. They both grew up in the same small town that I was born in. My mom is a pharmacist. I mentioned my dad is a real estate agent, a broker. They at a certain point, about, I want to say late middle school, early high school, they decided to just start a small business. So my mom had been the pharmacy manager for a grocery store, and she attended a conference and learned more about long-term care geriatric pharmacy, which essentially means if you're an older person and you're in a certain level of nursing home, you get the same 30 days worth of drugs on the 1st or 15th of the month every month. That's just what your doctor has got you on, and that's what you get. So she attended this conference, and they talked about how their pharmacy chain, this presenter talked about how their pharmacy chain was expanding, and mom was like, well, we could do that, and set it up with the pharmacy she was working for. And then later decided, I'm just going to do this myself. And so went into business on her own. And my sister was her first licensed pharmacy tech. And I was too independently minded. I was in high school. I was like, no, I'm not going to work I'm going to go work. I'm going to go get another job. So, but they did that all, I would come home from college and my dad would be like, hey, do you mind giving me the day off? And I would go deliver the drugs to the local nursing home in place of him doing it. So I think that's just a simple example of her. She saw something, she thought it was interesting, she followed it, she realized she could do it, and then she put it into practice. And there have been plenty of times in my life where the same thing has happened, right? So a simple example is and you asked about education earlier. Early on in my career, I would find myself sometimes, because I came from an educational background instead of a real estate background, a particular piece of jargon would get used. Somebody would say, I don't know, basis points or cap rates or whatever. Simple concepts to me now, but at the time I was early enough in my career that it came out of left field, right? And I would feel like caught out because I'd be like, oh, I don't know what that means. And then I'd go ask my boss, like, hey, what's this, or that. Because I didn't, my, like I said, I went to school for software engineering, not real estate development or construction or management. And so I decided, well, what's the best certification? What's the best like intensive education I can get about this? What's like the Six Sigma of commercial real estate? And so I decided to go get my CCIM and got my boss's blessing to take the time off to do that because it's like 4-week-long intensives, and then did so. And that is really the like initial stepping stone that led me to want to be a faculty member for the National Apartment Association. Like now I have the opportunity to teach certification classes for our team at Landmark, and in fact, I just finished one last week. So,
and what is your sister doing?
So she runs a household right now. She's a mom, full-time homemaker, but she, I guess, kind of her side job now, but her primary job, we used to live together actually. So when I moved after grad school, I got this job and I moved to Denver, Colorado. My sister moved with me, and she trains service dogs. So yeah, that's her calling. She's always had a love of animals. She has a degree in zoology or biology.
Did you guys?
I guess zoology. Oh yeah, yes.
Oh,
we always had,
okay,
not tons, but we always had 1 or 2 golden retrievers growing up. Yeah, she just, it was very obviously from the beginning her passion. And I still remember she went for the interview, and the interview was essentially for the person who like went after hours at the end of the day to kind of like clean up, like they, poop scoop the play yard and training areas and stuff and wipe everything down. And so she got to this interview and was like, yeah, I actually have like a degree in zoology and I'm really interested in animal behavior. And she called me from the car and she was like, they promoted me in the interview. And I was like, I'm really proud of you. That's awesome. And so I also have a very particular memory of, I've been her older brother her whole life. And so
how many years difference?
It's just a year and a half,
okay.
But I've always been big brother.
Yeah.
And I went to her first graduation ceremony. So this is when the dogs have been working with the folks they're paired with for about 6 months, and they sort of formally complete that training process. And it's worth highlighting that the dogs are all dogs that were rescued from shelters that would have otherwise been put down. And they're paired with children with special needs and wounded veterans. So like the emotionality of this occasion is incredibly high. And I was just like a weeping mess. I was just like, I'm really proud of my sister and whatever. So hers is one of the weddings I got to officiate. So that was really nice. But yeah, I'm incredibly proud of her. She's done incredible work. So, right.
So one of the things you mentioned in the beginning was, the fear of public speaking just doesn't exist for you, right? It's and it's funny you say that because public speaking, I think, is one of the top maybe 3 fears that people have. Why do you think you lack fear in public speaking? And then inversely, where do you have fear in your life that you think other people don't have?
Well, I'm not sure. I think maybe I don't know what I don't know, right? So I don't know that I have like an individual phobia. Like I've always joked with people, like my kids are like, what are you afraid of, Dada? And I'm like, well, I'm not really afraid of individual things, but like a snake in the dark during a thunderstorm, that sounds scary, right? You start to layer things on, they get more complicated. But to your question, I guess it's probably reps. I've just done a lot of public speaking, and I think I've always enjoyed it, but at a certain point, what originally starts as nervousness or worry, actually, what starts as worry or fear dulls itself into nervousness. And that nervousness then becomes almost like an anxious energy where you're like, I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm excited to see what happens. And that's really the space I'm in most of the time now. I mean, I mentioned I'm running for school board. We had like a town hall last night. And so we got a bunch of questions from the folks who were attendants and the moderator. We hadn't heard them before. All of us showed up with various sets of notes. And for me, it was really just like I can't wait to tell these people how passionate I am about our district, right? So I guess it's just taking every opportunity. I mean, I'll say that oftentimes my teammates or folks I know in the industry will be like, man, you seem really comfortable doing that. How did you get that comfortable? And I tell them to go take a Toastmasters class, because it's just the opportunity to speak extemporaneously and the opportunity to intentionally prepare to speak publicly. The only way you're going to get better at it is if you create a discipline and you do it. So I'm very comfortable public speaking. I still go to a Toastmasters class from time to time just to sharpen the saw. So I certainly support that organization. But any opportunity, whatever it is, any opportunity folks can get to get additional experience is only going to help you conquer that fear.
And outside of Toastmasters, which I've done too, and I think is awesome, because it is like most things in life, it's just reps, right? I think it was Malcolm Gladwell who coined the 10,000 hours.
Yep.
I think the next iteration of that is like 10,000 iterations, right?
Yeah.
Because
100%.
it's really about taking a shot, like learning, and then putting in the feedback or the observation, the next iteration, then improving. So I imagine public speaking is that.
I tell my kids all the time, like everyone in this family makes mistakes, you have to do things badly to learn from them. Now, in the business world, I'd rather learn from somebody else's mistakes than my own, right? Like somebody else has already paid for that experience. There's no need to pay that price twice, right? That's what collaboration is about. It's sharing that experience so we don't all have to make the same mistakes over again to learn that lesson. But, my kids are kids. So a lot of that stuff they have to kind of figure out on their own. And as a parent, you try to just make sure that the guardrails are up, so when they make that mistake, it doesn't harm them, and they can learn from it.
What mistakes come to mind that you've maybe made in your career?
That's a great question. I think there were times early on in my career where, in an effort to make sure, so bear in mind that much of my career has been focused on third-party work, client services, or business development or consulting. I'll give you two examples, actually. So I think sometimes we, in a tendency to satisfy clients, we try to overpromise things that are outside our locus of control. And a specific example doesn't jump to mind, but anybody who's ever thought of themselves as a people pleaser understands that you can actually only promise what you can deliver on, right? And so I'll often tell our team, I might tell a client these days, oh yeah, I'll get off the phone and I'll call Joe, the regional, right away. But I'm never going to say oh, Joe will get back to you by the end of the day, because we have 1,000 people working on our team at Landmark. I don't know if that person's getting on a plane in an hour. I don't know if they've had a family emergency. I don't know if their kid has a recital at school that day. So I try to really just focus on, we want to deliver the best experience possible, but the communication, the commitments we make, if we're going to build trust in our relationships, we have to stick to commitments we know we can individually follow through on, because those are the only ones we have control over. So that's example one. The other example, it's actually flown to my mind.
And I want to.
It's all right. So
no, I want to double click on the first example.
Sure,
you gave, which is I've thought a lot about this too. To summarize, you're saying to in some ways under promise and over deliver, right?
I'm explicitly saying to only promise what you control delivery of.
What you control delivery. Okay.
Yeah. Stephen Covey calls it locus of control, right? So if it's not within my power to give you, I'm not going to promise you that I can give it. I can describe an intention to give it to you, but I'm not going to promise, because I can't knowingly commit to that.
Yeah. How do you reconcile that with the idea of shooting for the stars and getting to the moon? In other words, at least for us as a startup, right? That's fighting tooth and nail every day just to survive. Sometimes we have to set ambitious goals.
Sure.
and constantly push what we think is possible. And even if we fall short, it pushes the boundary of what's possible. And I hear you on that. And I've fallen into the trap of being unrealistic with expectations and over-promising and under-delivering. And it feels better to under-promise and over-deliver, because then you're meeting your commitments and you are somebody that is reliable. But on the other hand, I also think about the shooting for the stars and getting to the moon.
I think that goals need to be smart, specific, right? But they don't need to be guaranteed. That's their decision. That's why they're goals, right? And I think I wouldn't conflate a large overarching goal with the commitments you make, honor, and complete to get to that goal. So part of turning a wildly ambitious destination into something actionable is like plotting the course for how you get there. Yeah, it might be ambitious and outside of my control for us to get to point X at some point in the future, but the first thing we're going to do has to be something I can control, or we'll never make any progress towards whatever that larger long-term destination is. My parents named me after a sail, so I have a lot of like nautical analogies just built in. You asked me about them, and I obviously said they're from the same small town in Vermont, but they, in fact, lived for several years in the Virgin Islands in St. Croix. I want to say it was my great uncle, but I have a relative who was comptroller of the Virgin Islands. So the U.S. Virgin Islands are St. John, St. Thomas, and St. Croix. My parents lived in St. Croix and really only moved home right before I was born. So they used to race Hobie cats, which are little like 16, 18-foot catamaran sailboats. That was like their thing they did to pass the time. My dad came in from sailing one day. My mom was pregnant with me, and he said they had decided to name me Jonathan already. And my dad was like, if his middle initial's an I, we could just all call him Jib. So that is the front little triangular sail on a sailboat. Is what literally all of those first cousins, that's what they all called me growing up. So yeah.
What have you learned from your parents?
I think my mom definitely taught me the idea of following an opportunity, even if it's not the opportunity you expected. We talked about that a little already, but sometimes making progress towards your goals reveals paths to other things you never even knew could be on the map for you. And so for me, I am where I am today in my career solely because I took advantage of opportunities when those opportunities came up, right? I could have said, oh, well, I don't really like this software engineering job, but I'm almost done. I'm just going to get it over with and then figure it out. Or I was like, well, I'm really liking this communications class I'm taking. Why don't I figure out what other opportunities there is over there? My dad, I definitely get my gregariousness, my like gift of gab from. Like he like any, I suppose, real estate broker, he was certainly a person who like was a salesperson and used charisma as a tool, and I get that from him wholeheartedly. So,
And when you think about your parents, do you feel like you guys are very similar, or do you feel like you are different than your parents?
I think you mentioned earlier you which I appreciate, by the way, offered a compliment that I seemed to you to be both very left brain and very right brain, and I think that it is not as though my parents are just one of those and none of the other, but I think generally speaking, they're like each of them is one of those things primarily, and I am a blend of those things. So there are certainly times when I'm my mother's son, and there are other times when people are like, oh, you're like a, spitting image of your dad or whatever. So I think it depends on the day and what I'm doing, right?
If you were to distill, you mentioned Ryan Holiday and Stoicism, which I follow. If you were to distill some of the, if you were to distill your values, right? Sure. And starting with Stoicism, how do you think that's impacted your life?
Well, courage first, right? Every day before I drop my kid, I don't drop my kids off every day at school. My wife and I trade that off, but on days when I drop them off, every day I turn to them, and before Hollis gets out of the car, she's my oldest, she gets out for second grade, and I turn to her and I say to her and her sister, Boves are brave. And we describe bravery in our household as being kind, strong, focused, and humble. And that's not far off from courage, discipline, justice and wisdom. So
you have family values?
oh yeah.
What are they?
The ones I just, yeah. Boves are brave, and bravery is kind, strong, humble, and focused.
So if I were to,
That no particular order, I suppose. But
so if I were to ask your daughters what those values are, they would know because you guys talk about it frequently, or?
yeah, I think the younger one is still like learning them in practical application, but I will try to be intentional about asking my older daughter, like, hey, what were you working on today? Were you kind today? Were you strong today? Etc. So yes, we try to, they're young enough that it's very much at the point now where I think it's just about making sure the language is present for them and they're thinking about the world in that lens. And then, the other part of the reason I decided to throw my ring in the hat for this like local political school board thing is that Stoics aren't passive, right? You have to be an involved member of your community if you want to say that you're truly a part of it. So I'm not one to sit on the sidelines. To be clear, whatever sports my kids decide on, I will be their biggest fan. I'll be there cheering my heart out. But outside of that, if you'll forgive the analogy, like I'm not one to sit still or if I have a self-criticism, it's that I often do a little of everything, which feels like too much sometimes. So
why do you do that? Why do you do so much?
I just like to be busy. I mean, I like to feel like I've got the next thing to move on to. Perhaps part of being as extroverted as I am and not have developing that introversion as much is that I don't particularly like to sit still in silence, right? Now, to be clear, I know that at this age. So every night before we go to bed, my kids do a Peloton meditation with Anna or I, depending on which of us is doing bedtime. But we just cracked like 1,000 meditations the other day. So
wow.
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
You do it so every night.
We just, it's a really great, listen, if you're trying to get your kiddo to calm down, 5 minutes of a professional instructor talking calmly, you could do worse than that, right? So yeah, that's been a great part of our routine from pretty early on, and the kids respond well to it. And honestly, as a parent of young children, I try to be really intentional about making the time between when they come home from school and we're done with work and the time when they go to bed. I try to protect that time as best I can. Certainly things come up or, whatever. Sometimes you're on like vacation or, family member who calls. But aside from that, I try to be, we both, I should say, my wife and I both try to be really present for them during that time. And so it's actually quite a nice bookend to like get a little bit of time in the car to go pick them up. And then we do our bedtime, dinner and family. We do a little like, what are your 3 things for today? Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Sometimes the girls share a frustration and sometimes they talk about who they were a friend to that day. And then we do bedtime, and when we meditate, and it's a nice little like bookend on that part of the day. And then my mind is pretty clear after that. And it's always great to get to like snuggle with your kiddos for a moment. And then either if I've got a little bit of work left to do, I'll knock that out, or I'll try to get a little bit of reading done, or whatever it is,
If you were to project out both your kids being 18 and, they go to college, and you reflect on, the 18 years that you had with them, what would you say would be a success? What would be a success to you?
I want them to be comfortable in their own skin, whatever that ultimately looks like, moving through the world with that bravery, right? Like I want them to be kind to others. I want them to feel strong and secure and self-confident. I want them to be humble in a way that isn't self-aggrandizing, but I also want them to know their worth. And and I want them to be focused. And I don't want them to like go to college knowing what they want to do with the rest of their life. But I want them, especially in a world with so many distractions available on our phones or 100 other things, I'm sure by the time they go to school, I want them to have the ability, like kind of like I said earlier, is often the thing I have to be intentional about, to like sit in stillness and focus on something and get it done. So, I mean, not to simply expand on what I told you our family values are, but I mean, I suppose that's a good thing, right? So that's what I want for them.
How did you meet your wife?
She did not work for me directly, but we worked for the same company. So I met her actually when she was a college student. And after she graduated, she moved to Denver, and we had this relationship of having worked together previously and talked shop about business and that sort of thing. And so when she moved to Denver, her folks were also there at the time. I was happy to make myself available as a Denver tour guide, and one thing led to another. And it's actually my first supervisor, the one who hired me out of grad school into the privatized student housing world. His name's Dan Altersdorf, but Dan was our officiant at our wedding. So maybe that was part of the reason I decided that I was going to do that for other people too. I thought it was cool that we had somebody do that who we actually had like a personal, direct relationship with.
I love it. So we talked a little bit about it earlier, but let's move on to your journey through multifamily.
Sure.
We started at Campus Advantage for 12 years. 10 years?
I was there for 8 years.
8 years, which is incredibly long.
Yeah.
I feel like these days the norm is to be at a job for a couple of years and keep bouncing around.
Yeah. And I just finished 10 years at Landmark.
Exactly.
Essentially, my journey is grad school, 2 companies. Now, certainly different roles within those companies, but yeah, just 2 companies.
So first question, I guess, is like, why stay at companies for so long?
I suppose the answer is, if you find the right one, why do you need it? If you have the opportunity to continue to grow and challenge yourself, why would you need to move anywhere else, right?
Yeah, so it sounds like you're a good picker then.
I would attribute that as much to luck as intentionality. I certainly have friends and family members who have picked what they thought was going to be a place they were going to retire at, and then, somebody else does something that's, again, outside their locus of control. I mean, to be clear, being at companies that have given me the opportunity to grow as much as I did is as much outside of my control as my relatives or friends who have been in situations where that company went bottoms up or they had to go find a new job or whatever. So I guess you can call that luck. And to your point, I don't know, maybe I had more surface area for that luck because, the reason I'm at Landmark now is that my supervisor saw me present at a conference, and when he was hiring for my position was like, we should make sure we get that guy on the list too. So
yeah. See, that's the perfect example of the luck surface area.
Yeah, for sure.
Why extroverts are in an advantageous position, because you chose to speak at that event and your supervisor saw that. That's crazy.
Although the only counter argument I would offer, I agree with everything you just said, but in that example, right? Like, I have observed that the introvert in my life, my wife is the most prominent introvert in my life. She has the depth of the relationships she has, her friendship is constantly impressive to me. And I have to believe that from a networking perspective, sure, I can do a favor for this person or that person, but she has folks she can genuinely rely on, right? And I have really great friends as well, but just in terms of like the if you think of a relationship like the, customer service bank account or whatever, then I guess from the introvert's perspective, it's like, yeah, I have fewer accounts, but the credit history is 25 years long, right? So maybe that analogy doesn't work, but
that makes sense.
I think that yes, perhaps fewer relationships and less surface area, but depth is a thing too. And I would suggest that she has deeper relationships than anybody I know. So maybe there's something to that.
Have you prioritized friendships through your life?
I have, but I definitely think that during COVID, I rediscovered a group of friends that I have become incredibly close to. These are all friends from college and graduate school who we all kind of reconnected during the pandemic and took advantage of, Telegram and Google Chats and watching movies together on Chrome extensions and that sort of thing. And actually for a recent birthday, they all came out here to Austin for a week before Formula One, and we were able to reconnect. So yeah, I haven't always, but certainly in the last, I guess that's 5 years. That's definitely been a priority. Yeah, for sure.
Tell me a little bit about your journey throughout Campus Advantage.
Yeah,
what did you start with? And
essentially, when I started, I was a trainer. I would go from site to site, and I would teach community assistants. We call them community ambassadors at Landmark. But I would teach our community assistants the basics of their job, right? So my final graduate assistantship at the University of Vermont was resident assistant recruitment, selection, and training. So didn't really fit on the business card, but regardless, I was a trainer. And so I was a traveling trainer for Campus Advantage. I would go from property to property. I specifically remember there was one August where I wasn't at my hotel, or I was only at hotels. I wasn't at my actual apartment at all because the amount of post-grad school friends getting married and a family visit in there at some point meant I was on the road every weekend and every weekday that particular month. Wow. That has scaled back over time, but I had an opportunity there to assist with a consulting engagement in Guadalajara, of all places. And, volunteered again, one of those opportunities where it was I took advantage of the opportunity and I was willing to volunteer. And, it was, I had my other responsibilities covered. I always tell our team now, if you want to be ready for those opportunities, the first thing you have to do is your actual job, right? You have to have those things crossed off to have the time to be able to make yourself available for that additional stuff. So did that first consulting engagement. I think obviously you can make your own determination about my verbal communication from this conversation. I'm a pretty skilled written communicator. I think it can be sometimes challenging for people to have both of those skill sets. So the fact that I was able to kind of have these conversations with clients and then again, it was my first one. It wasn't I wouldn't call it a gold star or anything, but I put together a pretty serviceable first draft of our consulting report. And our head of business development was how would you like to do this more often? And that morphed into less of a residence life training role and more of a consulting role. In time, that consulting role morphed into a business development role, soliciting, recruiting, finding new third-party management clients. I spent 6 months in Russia on this consulting engagement. I came back and I got a call from a headhunter after about 5 months. And basically got asked, hey, we'd really love for you to come to Landmark and build this third-party management platform. Landmark was, hopefully shall remain, the kind of preeminent developer in the student housing space, our little corner of multifamily. I always laugh when we're doing NAA certifications because I'll be here's the one page in this module where student housing is mentioned. We're a tiny, small but mighty corner. So I had that opportunity to go and help build that from the ground up. So we went from about, call it 2,000 beds of third-party management to about 12,500 as about a quarter of our portfolio at the time. And then I had the opportunity to shift into a role where I, along with my colleagues, oversee our property management department. So yeah, that's the short story.
It's a short story. So, and your current role is EVP of acquisitions.
It's acquisition and management services, but I would say my day job is way more focused on management services. I'm really a liaison to our acquisitions team because of my prior experience there. I'm really the interface between the deal team, which is, there's a group of talented folks at Landmark led by JD Gehring, and they definitely do the lion's share of the work there. So my background, the oversight of the operations department is between myself and Rob Dinwiddie, who's our other EVP of management services. My background is more focused on client side and onboarding new assets. As you can imagine, if you do a lot of third-party business, you're transitioning properties onto the portfolio pretty routinely. Rob's background is in marketing and leasing, and he has a ton of experience transitioning those new lease ups into stabilized deals. And then we're supported by an incredibly talented crew of senior vice presidents and VPs who oversee the various components of day-to-day ops, marketing, creative services, etc.
So if you add these two together, 8 plus 10, roughly 18 years or so in the industry.
Yep.
What has changed? I know it's a super broad question, but how would you paraphrase the 2 decades of
I'm gonna dodge your question a little, but I am gonna give you an answer. I was on a panel, I don't know, maybe like a year ago, and there was a specific question about emerging technologies, and the question was essentially like, what should the industry expect in five years from now? I was like, well, I don't have a crystal ball, but I thought it might be interesting to go back and look at like the 2020 Forbes like forecast for student housing, or it was like, what are the top 5 technologies in the next 5 years, right? And one of them was AI, so they got that one. And another one was like full self-driving. We're not quite there yet. Another one was like drone delivery. Well,
Amazon's stress.
Yeah, I mean, like they're not really flying around, but like I can go to West Campus in Austin right now and watch a robot deliver Chick-fil-A. So I mean, we're most of the way there. So I think, to answer your question, I think the student housing industry adopted a lot of paperless processes in the last 2 decades. And I think during the pandemic, we heard a lot of folks in the multifamily industry talk about, oh man, we've got to get fully contactless leasing up and running. And student, we were like, well, we already have international students. So we've been doing that for 3 years.
Yeah.
I think student housing has often been, I wouldn't call it cutting edge, but I do think we are the testing ground for emergent technologies in the space often.
So this was going to be my question, is the lore that I hear is that, student housing is 3 to 5 years ahead of multifamily.
I certainly think there are boutique apartment managers who have incorporated, like various smart technologies or whatever, to try to essentially they want their differentiating factor in the multifamily space to be that they are cutting edge. But I would agree with you that as a general average, the student housing space, we're literally built to sell to a bunch of early adopters. So we have to be on our toes when it comes to that sort of thing.
Where are we seeing the usage of AI in student housing that we're not seeing in traditional management, multifamily?
I'm not sure I know exactly where multifamily is or isn't using AI, but I would say that the biggest uptake I'm seeing in AI right now is in deflection. And what I mean by that is explicitly
fraud.
Well, if a student has a problem at 11 p.m., our office isn't open. And historically, if it's a maintenance request, well, I'll do the other way. It's simpler. If it's a leasing question, that either means that our staff doesn't respond until the office opens, or, we've got like a random team member who's like, my shift tonight is manning texting from, blank to blank or whatever. And if it's a maintenance request, that it means like, it could be as simple as, oh, well, this person's toilet is running. A maintenance person is going to have to clock in, drive to the property, turn off the knob on the toilet, clock out, drive home, clock out or whatever. And that obviously is expensive. And it's not great for employee satisfaction either. These folks are like, oh man, these kids can't figure this stuff out for themselves, whatever. A bot can not only be like, it sounds like you're having an issue with your toilet. Here's how to turn off the knob that's behind the toilet that you, 21-year-old, may not know exists. Does that, has the water stopped flowing? Yes. Okay, great. Would you like me to schedule you an appointment for tomorrow at 10 for the maintenance tech to come and service the toilet? Or is that too early and would you prefer new? Right? Like that is immediate payroll savings. It's an improvement in customer satisfaction. They're not freaking out waiting for the person to get there. There's a reduction in whatever water damage is involved. And of course, if their answer is no, that didn't fix the problem, then the bot can dispatch that person right away. But those are the types of things. So offering a resident opportunities to self-serve in a way that actually makes the resident more satisfied than having to wait for a human resolution, which is bound by kind of normal work hours or normal human processes. For me, that's like that. I'm not a person who subscribes to the idea that we will ever have a personless or contactless office. Student housing is too high touch. It's too high customer service. But I certainly think that we could see a version of centralization of tasks where much of our routine processes are automated. I mean, right now, we have a bot following up on delinquency. Nobody wants that job. Nobody wants to be the person who calls and says, hey, I know you know, but your rent's due. But the bot can be professional and calm and, can escalate challenges if there's a challenging situation or a one-off situation. But for the routine, hey, it's the 6th of the month. Oh my gosh, why didn't my automated payment go through? Let me resolve that. Great. So
what do you feel like are the other unsolved problems? We talked about leasing, maintenance, delinquency. What do you feel like are the other unsolved problems or manual workflows or work tasks that AI can solve that you're not seeing the solutions you want today?
I think the biggest customer service issue we see in student housing that isn't in the list you just covered is related to roommate disagreements. So a lot of these young folks are living with a different person for the first time. In some cases, it's the first time they've ever shared an apartment, right? They might have siblings, but they grew up and had their own bedrooms and all that stuff. Yeah, you had a space to retreat to that was just yours. And oftentimes there's, let's call it a life skills gap, right? So I don't know that there's an AI solution that sits those two parties down and acts like a trained mediator. But I would say that's the one area where I don't think AI has a good resolution right now.
What do you feel like about internal operations at the corporate level? One of the problems that somebody mentioned to me, especially as a third-party manager, is every month or quarter or whatever your cadence is, you have to, report to your ownership groups, right?
Sure.
And one of the manual workflows that this person talked about involving AI and similar to me is I also have to do investor reports and updates. Is using AI to help kind of create and cultivate these reports. Do you see any other kind of opportunities like that when you think about your staff's day-to-day on the corporate level?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of our routine reporting is pretty automated to begin with. I mean, not to oversimplify, but most monthly reports are a rent roll, a GL, and a variance explanation, right? So, and then maybe some pre-leasing data and a narrative. Of course, the AI can help draft that narrative, but in terms of, I'm not sure there's a lot of human labor left in that process, right? I mean, most of those reports are generated by a piece of management software pretty routinely. And that isn't to take anything away from our team members who assemble them. That certainly takes work. But I mean, for I think a fairly long time, we've all been using management software platforms that aggregate that data. Nobody's manually writing out a GL anymore. So yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that somebody brought up, many people brought up, is a multifamily and student housing and real estate as a whole has always been fragmented, but then it's also fragmented by technology, right? You have RealPage or Yardi or Entrata as your PMS, but then you also have all these kind of point solutions that have their own databases, that have their own dashboards, that have their own system. But there's no kind of synergistic solution to tie everything together and get insight. Do you feel like that is an opportunity for student housing and multifamily?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would agree that at Landmark, we've had to build those solutions, whether they're dashboards or projections or forecasting tools, on top of our management solution, our management software. And I think that's generally true. I do know that a number of those firms have like investigated opportunities to develop that in-house or acquired an AI partner to help bring that to bear. But I certainly think a differentiating factor for the company I work at now for Landmark is the fact that we've developed those business intelligence tools. I say that I think that because I know that we talk to investors about that, right? So I certainly think that there's an opportunity in the space for that piece of software to get added to the stack in an integrated way, for sure.
Jonathan, this has been super fun.
Oh, thank you, Shane.
Thank you for doing this, and I'm glad we got this scheduled. Where can people find out more about you, and if they want to recruit you to officiate their wedding, how do they do that?
That's actually funny. I have a school board website, but I don't have an officiating website. The simplest place to find me is on LinkedIn at Jonathan Bove. And of course, if you want to get a hold of me in my work capacity, you can just find me on the management team portion of the landmarkproperties.com website.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, Shiv. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Of course.